Ayman Khan here for Seconds Out with the one and only Frank Smith as we prepare for Parker versus Ryder this weekend. Frank, first of all, how you doing?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. It's good to be here. Looking forward to a big fight with John Ryder.
Let's start with that fight. There's a lot of boxing going on, especially over the Matchroom side as well this weekend. But John Ryder versus Zach Parker. Can you tell me about how this fight came about in the first instance?
Yeah, look, I think it's a great fight. It's a fight that George Warren came on to us with. John was looking at a number of other opportunities we were looking at as well. But it was a fight that made sense for him. WBO interim, I think there's a lot of talk about the winner going on from here and possibly facing Canelo. And a great fight, and it's good to do. An all-British fight is always good, and looking forward to it. But yeah, it's good, also good to be working. Obviously showing off the back of the Fury discussions, but a relationship with Warren between us and George Warren.
We'll get to that in a second, but just in terms of Ryder's chances this weekend, I mean, from the matchroom perspective, you believe he's got a very strong chance of winning the fight? Yeah,
100%. He wouldn't have taken the fight otherwise. We had a lot of opportunities he was looking at, but this is the one that he really wanted. I think you forget with John Ryder the experience he's got and the years he's been around for. He's been in this sport in big fights for a long, long time. He won't be fazed by the occasion. He won't be fazed by headlining. He's coming off the back of a great win and a good experience fight against Danny Jacobs as well earlier this year. So I think he's in a great place, and I believe he goes in there and does the job.
Matchroom are very much linked with Canelo, having worked with him previously on a number of occasions. So that Canelo fight in the offing is maybe more. You guys will know more so if that is realistically in the offing. How realistic is that fight for the winner of this fight this weekend?
Yeah, look, obviously Canelo's come out, he wants a fight in May and then he wants the Bivol fight in September. So we're working through, Eddie's discussing that with Canelo, Eddie Reynoso. But I definitely think, that there's a potential fight out there, definitely if John Ryder gets the win on Saturday.
Lots of boxing action this weekend. White Franklin being the Matchroom offering there. Boxing fans, whenever fights happen, they don't want the clashes. It was said yesterday that you and George were talking about potentially having a conversation about the main events not clashing. Where are we with that at the moment?
I was going to see George here today, but he's not. I don't think he's here. It's hard really because all venues are really the same in terms of curfew, in terms of broadcast time. So it is hard. I think we've discussed before. Ultimately, no one really wants to clash. It's unfortunate that there's 4 shows all on the same weekend, but it is what it is. I think if we could do something, we would, but I think we just, in truth, it's difficult to make that work because everyone's on the same, working towards the same thing, same curfews with venues, etc.
When you're planning a card and you're aware that another promoter has a card, another rival promoter has a card on the same weekend, do you particularly look at their cards and look at the competition and look to create better fights to be the better fight card of the week?
I think we naturally do that with every show anyway. We ultimately, like I say, no one wants to clash, but it does happen. We don't plan our schedule around anyone else's and we don't plan our fights around anyone else's. So the show we put on this weekend would have been the same regardless of whether there was 4 other shows on or none. So, it's not really a comparison factor. We don't say, we got to do this. I truly believe we have the best show of the weekend. When you look at top to bottom and the main event as well, the return of Dillian White. But there's some good boxing on this weekend.
Like you mentioned there, as a result of the conversations between Fury and Joshua breaking down, that the byproduct is that the communication lines have opened. So for boxing fans, we want to see these cross-promotion fights because the intrigue ramps up when we do get them. How likely are more of these in the offing of next year?
Yeah, look, I mean, ultimately everyone has to do what's right for their fighters, and if the right opportunities are there, then we'll take them. We're willing to work with anyone, whether that's Queensbury, as we've shown this week, whether that's boxer, like we've shown with the offer for Natasha Jonas. We work with the Wasserman Group and Sowlands often. We work with Top Rank often. We work with Golden Boy often. So, ultimately, if it makes sense for our fighters and it's the right decision, then we're always willing to look at it and do it.
Could you tell us if there are any cross-promotional discussions going on right now or any fights?
Obviously, the Tasha Jonas fight is one we're looking at with Boxer, but let's see. I'm sure you've seen a lot around that. Let's see how it plays out.
I want to get your thoughts on a couple of other things. First of all, the Fury vs Chisora 3 price point for the pay-per-view is $26.95. Your reaction to that price point? There's been some conversation about it.
Yeah, look, it's obviously expensive. I mean, I'm sure there's reasons why it's priced at that point, and that's what they need to make the fighters and the fight financially viable. Is it expensive? Yes, but I'm sure, like I say, there's reasons behind why it's priced at that point.
How many pay-per-view buys do you anticipate this one to do?
Which one, sorry?
Fury Chisora.
300,000.
In the climate we're in right now, is that a good projection, do you think, or?
I think it's relevant to the fighters and what they've done in the past. I think in comparison to, we always go back to the whole AJ thing, Canelo thing, but they're the two leading, essentially, pay-per-view fighters. Other people do big numbers in the right fights. I actually think, I think Derek Chisora is going to go in there and give it his all, and he'll have a tear up. But at the same time, certain people have made their mind up about the fight, which sort of hinders the ability of how big it can be. I think it's when people say, Tyson would sell out on his own. He's not quite correct. Ultimately, a lot of the time, fighters need the right partners to go in there with. And there's anomalies, like I say, like the likes of Anthony Joshua, like the likes of Canelo, who do bigger numbers.
Moving on from that, Usyk versus Hrgovic has been ordered by the IBF now. Matchroom made the stance and saying they're in the Hrgovic business, but boxing fans will want to see the undisputed fight. How likely is that to potentially scupper an undisputed fight next year?
I mean, look, obviously the IBF have ordered the mandatory fight between the two of them. We have to do a job for Filip Hrgovic. He's worked his way through the rankings. He's worked his way to get to the, final eliminator, and now he wants his shot at the world title. Obviously, it would be a different question if Fury wasn't fighting Chisora and they'd agreed already the terms of Fury Usyk and it was announced. That would be different, but that's not the case. Anything could happen with the fight with Derek Chisora. He could lose. He could get injured. Anything could happen in that fight. So ultimately, Filip Hrgovic can't be asked just to wait and see what happens there, and then we decide what we're going to do with you.
Another fight that's been ordered now. It was ordered before. I believe a deal was struck, but then a different move was made. That being Leo Santa Cruz and Lee Wood. Believing that a deal can be struck again for this one.
Possibly. I also think there's a view of looking at doing a different fight like we looked at last time, but that's something over the next few weeks. We've got time pressure now from the WBA. Over the next few weeks, it will play out, I'm sure.
Final few questions from me. What's the latest on Conor Benn? I'm sure you were expecting that question.
Still ongoing. He's still presenting his case to the relevant parties. I think in the next few weeks we'll have. I know, but it's the same comment every time. In the next few weeks we'll have some clarity on it. Fingers crossed. He can come out and talk about it, because that's the key. Ultimately, when you can hear more details on it, then you can understand his position. Currently, he can't really talk about it, so it makes it difficult for him. So we just have to see how things play out.
When we talk about this situation, are we talking about a legal situation, or are we talking about mediation between the two parties when it comes to the dispute between Conor Benn and relevant parties?
No, it's essentially a legal situation between Conor Benn and whether it's VADA, ultimately in relation to the tests. And that's what needs to play out for him then to be able to talk about it. Ultimately, the most important thing is getting the legal side right, and then he can deal with the PR, public perception, media side of it. First and foremost, he has to make sure he does things the right way. I've said a million times, I'm sure he would love to have been speaking about it every day. He's eager to get back in the ring, he's eager to get back going, but he knows he's got to focus on clearing his name first.
As of right now, what's your expectation as to what will happen?
I think this process plays out over the next few weeks, and then he can talk about it. It's hard to put an exact time frame on it now, but I think things are moving in the right direction for us to get some clarity and everyone to get some clarity.
The situation as well is Lawrence Okoli, given his comments, he's being vocal online about what he wants to do there. What is the situation with Matchroom and Lawrence Okoli in Matchroom's own words?
I mean, he has a fight left in his contract. It's a shame because I think everyone's done a good job with Lawrence Okoli to get him where he is. He's done the work, he's gone in there and won the titles, but we, alongside AJ Boxing and 258, have positioned him in a place to get him there. Unfortunately, he's got people around him who have different views on things, but it's not the first time it's happened in boxing. It won't be the last, I'm sure. We're very comfortable in our position, but it's a shame because when you work with someone for so long, you hope not to be in these positions, especially when you have a relationship with someone. So let's see how it plays out.
What is that situation? Is that a legal situation as well? And could there be a situation where maybe Lawrence buys himself out that contract if the case is that he has one fight left?
I think ultimately, look, I think Eddie said it in an interview yesterday, that we're open to sitting down and discussing, how we go about. But ultimately, when we've put a lot of work in, built someone up, invested a lot of money, we can't just be, right, see you later, I'm off, because it suits me. Other people have interfered with his contracts, and I would expect the same of someone else if we'd done that. That's just life. But hopefully, yes, we can come to some kind of amicable solution.
Final thing. Why should people tune into White Franklin over any other offering this weekend?
I think it's the best card out there. You've got Dillian Whyte against Jermaine Franklin. Dillian Whyte coming back off of his loss to Tyson Fury in a tough fight, in a real fight against Jermaine Franklin. Undefeated. I think he's 21-0. He believes he can go in there and get the win. You got the all-British heavyweight clash for the British title between Fabio Wardley and Nathan Gorman. Another great fight. You got Craig Richards against Bolotniks, which will be it's going to be a war, as we've always seen with Craig Richards. You got Sandy Ryan's back out, Pat McCormack's debut on a Matchroom show, Mark Dickinson's debut on a Matchroom show. George Liddard is out. I think I may have forgotten one, but I think it's a stacked card from top to bottom. It's a top show, and I think it's the best show out there.
Frank, pleasure speaking to you. Thanks for speaking to SecondsOut. Looking forward to the action this weekend.
Cheers.
Appreciate you.